The Apprentice Witch, Meg Raspberry, yawns, getting ready for the day, house running amok with animals. She casts her spell, brewing a proper tea to give to her master, Faust, then tends to the rest of the animals, providing food and playing with the carbuncle. On this day, the clouds drifted gently past the early autumn skies. She wasn't expecting on this day, her 17th birthday, for her master to nonchalantly tell her she was going to die in 1 year. She tried to wave it off as a joke, but Faust made it clear this was indeed no joke. Meg was cursed with a death sentence that gave her only 1 year left, and now, at 17, the curse had activated. It was an old curse, unknown to modern witches. Faust came up to Meg, casting a spell that gave her visions of the future. The curse was like a congenital disease. At 18, her biological clock will go haywire, aging her at 1,000 times the normal rate. She'd age 10 years in 3 days, and 100 years in a month, and live for at most a month before the curse killed her. Shocked, seeing the future to come, Meg asked for a solution. There was none, at least for the moment. And since it was a family disease, there was no point in trying to find the casters, since they had likely died out long ago. While Meg freaked out, all her master replied with is that she'd look after her right up until her final moments. Meg wondered how Faust could be so cold, given they've lived together for over a decade. She was hoping for at least a little sympathy. But now, Faust put her joking aside and explained the solution would be difficult, both in terms of how long it would take and what is required. The master presented a bottle and casted the spell on it. Starting today, Meg needed to gather fragments of emotion in the bottle. As the name suggests, the fragments were powerful emotions experienced by people. This was something called a seed of life. Of all the human emotions, it was made from joy. Faust imbued the bottle with time magic, so that it would crystallize and store fragments of emotion. Meg needed to use it to gather joy from all kinds of people. The tears people cry when they're happy, those were tears of joy. These tears were the material required to create a seed of life that would protect Meg from death. As long as she didn't dispel the effect, Meg could become immortal. Meg nudged at her master, giving her the, "Oh, come on, you really do care about me, don't you?" But was quickly flabbergasted, hearing Faust say she needed to gather 1,000 teardrops. In 12 months, she needed to gather 1,000 teardrops from people experiencing true joy. Meg spazzed out and put on her robe quickly. Going out into town, she lied on some grass, taking in the fact she was going to die in a year. She questioned what she'd been doing all this time, studying magic like crazy every day, working hard every day. She's done everything she could, but was that all for nothing? What was even the point in her being alive? It was her birthday, and she couldn't feel worse. She then started playing with the carbuncle to cheer her up, and that's when Anna spotted her. Anna had come to ask Faust for flowers, so that her mother could rest peacefully. Her mother had finally been let out of the hospital after such a long time, but now, she's sleeping and won't wake up. Her father told her she was resting because she's gone through so much. So, Anna wanted to give her some nice-smelling flowers for a peaceful rest. Looking at Anna, Meg thought about how she apparently lost both of her parents when she was little. Apparently, because she had no memories of them. The person who pitied her and took her in when she was orphaned was Faust. Meg decided to grant Anna's wish, and learned her mother loved pink flowers. Making their way, Meg was quite popular with the townsfolk, often referred to as Miss Faust's student. While getting food, she was greeted by the beautiful fiend Cavendish. Meg called it fate that they were meeting here today, and suggested they get married. However, she was turned down quickly. Anna commented on Meg's fame, and Meg was proud being a student of Faust, one of the 7 sages. They were the 7 smartest mages in the world. Then, with Anna saying Meg was going to be just like Faust someday, it reminded Meg of her impending death situation. So, she wanted to get back to the subject of helping Anna's mom. At Anna's place, Meg was surprised to find her father was Hendy, one of their regulars. Taking a closer look, she realized she's been here a few times before. He often ordered magical remedies from them. Hendy unfortunately didn't quite remember his wife's favorite flowers either, and suggested they may learn something by checking one of their photo albums. With Anna going to retrieve it, Hendy and Meg talked about how healthy Anna grew up, considering how sickly her mother had always been. His late wife was delighted about that too. It had been less than a week since she died. Anna brought the photo album out, and they smiled over all the wonderful trips Hendy and his wife had been through. He noted a particularly strange experience he had with her traveling in the Far East. They visited a temple on the mountainside and it snowed, even though it was a bright, warm spring day. Not only that, the skies were clear. It shouldn't have been possible, but pink snow fell from the sky. He felt bad, thinking he didn't do much for his wife. After Anna was born, he left most of the housework to her. He worked hard to feed his family, but had he known this would have happened, he would have found a way to travel more. Anna took Meg to her mother's grave, admitting she knew her mother wouldn't wake up ever again. But she still wanted to know if the world's greatest witch could wake her up. Sadly, Meg replied, no. Right before her mother went to sleep, she told Anna to look after her father. Anna knows her dad's been down lately. He was always looking at pictures of her mom with a sad face. So, she thought her father would feel better if her mother slept peacefully. She wanted those flowers for her mother to rest peacefully, so her father would feel better. Hendy hurried over to them, escaping from his afternoon rounds of work. He wanted to know if Meg found out his wife's favorite flower. Meg then brought up the roses, cornflowers, and irises. His wife displayed flowers that symbolized the places she visited. Perhaps she was trying to show Anna the world by displaying flowers from countries she loved. But there was one last flower she couldn't get. Maybe it was the one she wanted to show Anna the most. Meg told Anna about a tree in the Far East called a Yoshino cherry. It was a type of cherry blossom that bloomed in early spring. Meg then pulled out some petals out of her pocket and began calling for the fertility of the land, pleading for a miracle to revive the colors of the past. She casted a spell to summon a flurry of beautiful cherry blossom petals. It was just a temporary illusion, but it worked so well, Meg wondered if she really created all this. She acknowledged the regret Hendy felt about the trouble he put his wife through, but assured him his wife definitely understood how he felt. All the herbs in their home were chosen by his wife for his physical condition. The herbs, the cherry blossoms, all the flowers. No one loved her family as much as his wife did. She then assured Anna her mother would be fine now, especially now that she was seeing the flowers her mother wanted to show her most. She didn't have to hold it in anymore. Meg told Anna she did a good job, causing the tears Anna held in to finally pour out. She missed her mother ever since she left. She knew her father was sad that her mother was gone. Hendy then embraced his daughter, letting her know he was okay now, and that he wouldn't let her feel lonely like this ever again. And with tears shed between the father and daughter, Meg collected the first two. Afterwards, Anna praised Meg on her exceptional skills, letting Meg know she was going to become just like Faust. Seeing the little girl gleaming, there's no way Meg could tell her she was going to die in a year. Hendy added his belief in Meg, saying one day she'd be even greater than Faust, the eternal witch. Meg could feel the pressure, but accept it. If she became a great witch, she promised to show them real cherry blossoms instead of an illusion. Back at home, Faust was glad her student reclaimed her light. Meg presented the bottle, asking if what she collected were tears of joy, but unfortunately not. They were tears that held a combination of joy and grief. At the very least, they were pure tears that held extraordinary power within them. They contained a beautiful, clear, and kind emotion. That was probably why the bottle accidentally collected them. Faust was still happy though, knowing Meg was a witch who could get people to open their hearts. Meg didn't think that was very useful, but now asked why Faust waited with only a year left to tell her about the curse. 5 or 6 years would have been better. However, Faust countered, asking if Meg really thought she could have succeeded with 5 or 6 more years. And even Meg knew the answer to that was no. If she had been told back then, she would have taken the time for granted and done nothing all the way up to her final days. Faust knew the Meg right now had the right to hear the truth and the strength to fight her fate. Meg sighed. This was the worst birthday present ever, but either way, she was going to collect the 1,000 teardrops of joy. She wasn't going to let the curse stop you from liking this video and subscribing to my channel, because here at my Shoujo Weekly, I've got the best stories to stop you from life-ending gloom. I think. Stories of romance, stories with action, stories with heartfelt moments. So come on, watch my videos and vibe. Please hit that subscribe or I'll die. A week passed since Meg learned she'd been cursed with only 1 year left to live. So she was quizzing her animals on what kind of pace she needed to collect teardrops with the time she had left. Giving it to the owl, it wrote she needed to collect a pace of 3 drops per day. Oh man, she worked pretty hard just to collect 2 the other day, and they weren't even tears of joy. Yet, she was supposed to work even harder for one more teardrop than that every day? With Fiend finding her frantic, Meg hugged into her chest, whining and tearful. After learning about Meg's ailment, Fiend observed the beautiful teardrops collected. She giggled, remarking Meg's kindness, giving Meg what she believed to be some legroom to ask for marriage. But she turned Meg down like usual. Fiend had come with a request for Faust to fix her watch, since the watchmaker couldn't fix it. Faust explained the watch's fairy had weakened. Fiend couldn't see them, but they were clear to Meg. Whenever anything organic or inorganic has fulfilled its function, a fairy enters it. Fairies were the driving force that made things work. Fiend was sad, believing her watch might not be fixable. However, Faust suggested Meg take her to Zeppetto's shop. He was a watchmaker and a master of his craft, who could likely fix what would stump an average watchmaker. Zeppetto observed the style of the German military watch to be rather old. It was high quality though. Each part was expertly crafted. He could sense the maker's dedication within. With him taking the time to try to fix it, he had the two girls clerk for the shop. Meg wondered why Fiend couldn't just buy another watch, but Fiend admitted she had a personal attachment to it, commenting in reply that Meg had never been particularly sentimental about things. She wondered how Meg could be so lax, knowing she was going to die in a year. But for Meg, the idea didn't feel real. She'd never been much of a worrier. Meg was surprised, seeing her friend in tears crying over her. Thinking more about it, she realized Fiend was always this way. The two first met after she got beaten up by some town kids in a fight. Fiend put a band-aid on her, crying because the beating looked painful and she felt sorry for Meg. Meg was optimistic though, telling Fiend not to cry because she'd rather see her smile. Fiend hadn't changed one bit. She was as kind as she's always been. Meg was positive, telling Fiend she was at her cutest when she smiled. She promised she had no intention of dying. After all, she still needed to see Fiend go to university, graduate, attend her wedding, and see her grandkids. But she'd definitely give Fiend's husband a good thrashing. Zeppetto then returned, letting them know the watch was at the end of its life. Fiend accepted, remarking it was a memento from her grandfather. This made Meg remember Fiend sobbing during her grandfather's funeral. Meg had a suggestion, a memorial ceremony which is traditionally conducted. Objects were thanked for their years of service, and beseeched to rest in peace. She placed the watch down within the incantation circle, giving appreciation to the hardworking spirits that wander peacefully in sleep. She released the spirit of the watch back into the cosmos. Spirits returned that way were reborn as new spirits, and returned to reside in new objects. It might look different, but now Fiend could be with her dear grandpa again. Fiend was surprised at how natural the tears flowed. All kinds of memories of her grandfather came flooding back when she saw the light. Memories of him playing with her, eating with her, and patting her on the head when she got hurt. The light that emerged from the watch was quite gentle. The spirit was probably carrying the lives of both her and her grandfather. Walking while observing the third tier, Meg spotted Granny Flair. She helped the granny carry her groceries all the way home, but seeing her off, she noticed an ominous darkness emanating around the elderly woman. Meg first observed shadowy people when she was younger. Faust explained black mist appeared around those who are going to die within a month. The black mist was the effect of the Reaper. So lost in thought, Faust had to snap Meg out of it because they were having dinner. Meg wanted to know if there was a way to save someone enshrouded by the Reaper, but unfortunately, everyone was subject to something called fate. When a person's time comes, the Reaper enshrouded them. Meg suggested using a seed of life, but Faust was stern about not messing with the fates of others. Meg was furious, questioning her own fate, since she was trying to defy it. Who got to decide who lived and died? She couldn't forsake someone who might be savable, nor would she want to. She stormed off to Flair's house, with the owl and carbuncle. At this late hour, she made the excuse she got into an argument with her mistress and ran away from home. Treating Meg to a beef stew dinner, Granny Flair smiled, remarking Meg's argument with Faust to be much like hers with her husband. She believed that's how people learned more about each other. Resting in bed, Meg smelled flowers. Flair had been tending to flowers all day, and perhaps that smell went with her everywhere. Her son moved out long ago, and he's been so busy, the two hadn't seen each other in a while. She could tell Meg seemed worried and wanted to lend an ear. She thought Meg looked her best when she was smiling. Meg wondered what she could do for Granny Flair, and how much time she had left. 3 days passed since staying at her home, and Meg had been researching grimoires in the library at every opportunity, but she still hadn't found a way to save Flair from the Reaper. As if it was mocking her, the Reaper's mist surrounding Flair grew stronger and stronger, Granny brought Meg to her special place, a tree that had been part of her life since she was little. Whenever she played with friends or spent time with family, even spending time with Meg right now, the tree had always watched over her. Touching it, Meg's smile turned distraught. There was a disturbance in the tree's magical power. It was beyond saving. Meg was now willing to accept some fates just couldn't be changed. She asked Flair hypothetically, if the world was ending tomorrow, what would she do? And in response, Flair said she'd want to spend time with her family. That evening, Meg called for the power to travel distant lands and return with Granny Flair's family on her enlarged owl. Flair's son had been in shock since Meg showed up. She made it sound like Flair was in critical condition, but Meg's response was simply that she gave an undutiful son the opportunity to visit home. This was a trip for him down memory lane. He used to come and play here often with his late grandfather. They'd play well into the afternoon, and his mother would bring them homemade cookies. Flair thanked Meg for bringing her son Ed home. In her long life, she's met more than a few witches, but for her, Meg was the only one who's given her so much. Spending this warm, quiet day with her precious family, she believed she'd surely be punished if she wished for more. As the Reaper's shroud grew intensely, Meg promised she'd become an even more incredible witch to show Flair more delightful sights. Flair's hand began to fall, and the shroud vanished. Faust appeared, assuring Meg that Flair was resting peacefully. She praised Meg for doing her best, despite living through a burdened future many could never see. She told Meg this was why she needed to survive. Today, Meg would later make beef stew. Tomorrow, she'd bake rosemary cookies. That way, Granny Flair would live on through her. As long as she lived, Flair would always be with her. A week ago, Faust took off for North America, where the International Magic Conference of the Seven Sages was being held to discuss recent changes in the ecosystem and magical disasters. Meg sighed, knowing her brief respite home alone was over. The news then reported one of the sages, Sophie Hayter, putting on an impressive parade in South America. Meg turned off the TV in frustration. She was jealous that the two of them were the same age and witches. Yet, the whole world referred to Sophie as a princess, and she was all anyone talked about online. She asked her pets to answer why she wasn't a seventh sage, but they didn't want to. She was seething and decided to go to bed and sulk for a while. In the morning, she heard the voice of a woman telling her, "Wake up, that's an order." Finding the woman's foot on her mouth, she opened the window quickly because it stank and began to gag. Inori called her rude, believing her feet didn't stink that much. Inori was one of the seven sages, the witch of wisdom. Meg pondered this, having heard Inori was easily over 100 years old, yet she looked like a young woman. Meg asked why Inori was here, and Inori explained that Faust was out investigating changes to the ecosystem, and had asked her to check on Meg. Meg felt a little disrespected. Being 17 now, she felt she could handle things at home just fine. However, it wasn't Meg, but the house Faust was concerned about. So, Inori would be staying a few days. There was one thing Meg required for Inori to do though. She wanted the sage to wash her stinky feet. Meg served some tea, and with Inori learning how competent Meg was with magic, she asked if Meg had a nickname yet. But no, she was just the world's greatest apprentice. We learned that skilled sages earn nicknames from the council. It's proof that they're first-class witches. Inori expressed interest in more of Meg's homegrown herbs, so Meg offered to show off the garden. She wanted to pick an infusion of mint oil that could make Inori's feet smell lovely. Because yes, they smelled that badly. As a child, Faust had given Meg the duty to take care of the house woods, despite the young Meg vehemently trying to refuse because she was busy playing. Over the next 10 years, she tended to it, and it became her herb garden. Inori observed how well Meg treated the land. The people on the planet, in contrast, had polluted the air and cut down the forests. A lot of the land was no longer how it should be, but the people in charge think they could fix what they've done with magic. As Meg picked the mints, she remembered crying over the fact they'd overwhelmed the patch as a young child. She thought the witch's woods were done for and wanted to set fire to it, burning everything down to the roots. In response, Faust told her not to because everything had life, unique features, and a way of living. She needed Meg to understand what she was dealing with and adapt. Witches needed to understand the laws of nature and exist alongside them without brute forcing everything. Clearing plants away or reducing their numbers left magic in the land with nowhere to go. As a result, that magic flowed towards large objects, and if the power became too great, it could go out of control. Maintaining the world's equilibrium was an ironclad rule for mages. Inori wanted to know what Meg would do with that power, and Meg replied she'd acquire wealth, fame, and build a harem made up of only handsome men. All jokes. Discussing heavy subjects just wasn't her thing. People could die at any time. Meg knew their lives were short, so she believed it should be filled with as much fun as possible. Inori asked what Meg thought of his fun, and Meg smirked, answering, alcohol, tobacco, delicious food, and women. She eventually washed Inori's legs. Inori had been so busy, she hadn't even bathed for the last few days. Ew. Inori then told Meg once she was done with her apprenticeship, she should come join her as her assistant. They could develop medicines together as partners, work with pharmaceutical companies to search for medicinal ingredients, and research their effects. She'd like an assistant with good plant knowledge. Meg was concerned with what her mistress would say, and secretly, her impending death, which is why Inori said after her apprenticeship was finished. Inori felt youth was for traveling. She had traveled all around the world at the age of 10. That night, Meg meditated over this, something Inori never did, being the Witch of Wisdom and all. She was a genius who developed her magic using only knowledge and inspiration. She could even tell Meg was going to die soon. All her reactions seemed a bit flat when they were discussing the future. After explaining her situation, Meg was shocked to learn Inori didn't know much about fragments of emotion, because emotions weren't really used in modern magic. But since the olden days, tears have been said to possess a mysterious power. Inori observed the bottle and explained her method to collect 1,000 teardrops would involve gathering data and designing medicines or spells to recreate conditions that cause them. She was quite mechanical as a scientist. Meg admitted she felt elated being invited as Inori's assistant. She had only ever lived in Lapis. She used to be excited standing in front of a door leading to the rest of the world. People say she was monstrously positive, but even she knew collecting 1,000 tears of joy in 1 year was close to impossible. Inori asked if she was giving up, and that's when Meg realized she'd been working on accepting death instead of trying to live. Inori broke into sudden laughter over Meg's stupidity for almost giving up but not realizing it. She then decided to show why she was one of the 7 sages. She snapped her fingers, revealing the starry sky, one you'd have to travel to the ends of the world to see. Then, with a single wave, a star shower rained. She did this by changing the paths of the meteors a bit. Meg realized something seeing this meteor shower. The potential of magic was limitless. Inori wanted Meg to wish for survival, to become a witch who goes out into the world. With Faust returning home, she was greeted by the other 2 stuffing their faces. Inori then grabbed onto Meg, asking to have her as a future assistant. Faust didn't think that was a bad idea, should the time come. And so, Inori told Meg not to die. She wanted Meg as her right-hand woman. Meg swore on it, vowing to become a greater witch than both her and her master. The Witch of Wisdom gave her a dream, one waiting for her once she overcame this year. A dream of possibilities and a world she hadn't seen yet. Several weeks later, the news reported the Otherworld Festival was just 1 week away. Lots of tourists have descended on Lapis to interact with the inhabitants of the Otherworld this year. The Eternal Witch, Miss Faust, who would begin the festival by opening the gate to the Otherworld, sat down with Mayor Carter. But what they didn't know was that her back was hurting so bad, she didn't know how she was going to open the gate a week from now. This was Lapis's biggest annual festival. They couldn't cancel it either, because they needed to release magic power. Magic tended to gather in Lapis. The excess needed to be consumed. Opening the other gate to the other world was an important ritual for doing that. Faust considered calling in a substitute for this. Meg felt a little chilly in the morning, and lighting a warm fire, she was shocked to see Sophie Hayter right behind her. Faust would likely be fully recovered after the festival. For the time being, she needed Meg to accompany Sophie, since she knew more about the town and the Otherworld gate. Alright, the start to the series definitely had me tearing up a little. Subscribe to the channel and let me know if I should continue. For now though, watch this next video. It's me, ComfyTea. I'll see you all in the next one.